You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
You're listening to Mission Log the Orville, an episode-by-episode discussion of the adventures of the crew of the USS Orville.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Log the Orville. Join us as we explore this week's episode, Primal Urges, for meanings, morals, messages, and to see if it aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. Just make sure that you've cleared your, cookies in your browser history. I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi.
And my name is Mike Richards. Mission Log the Orville is a conversation that depends on your participation. Share your thoughts, ideas, and tell us what we missed at ML_the Orville on Twitter, Mission Log Pod on Facebook. You can email us at missionlog-the-orville@roddenberry.com. And if you're watching this on the Roddenberry YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe. And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode. Jessica, you think it's time for a day drink?
Oh, yes.
Day drink.
Cheers.
And now here's Jessica with the recap.
Oh, goodness. I'm going to preface this that if you hear a little bell, my cat has decided that she's enjoying the recap. Primal Urges. Prologue. The crew has the rare fortune of watching a red giant star devour the final planet in its system, and despite everyone's awe, Bortus seems nonplussed and asks to be relieved from duty 15 minutes early. As he supposedly heads home, he receives a call from Klyden, his husband, asking when he will arrive home. Bortus tells Klyden that he will work again late tonight, which has been the same every night this week. So if he's not going home and he's not working, what's he doing? Well, the Mocklin in the simulator might have an answer. Bortus has a hot simulated date. Act 1. Bortus arrives home very late and wakes up Klyden as he gets into bed. Klyden wants to talk about why Bortus has been kept so late at work, but what he really wants is to make this sexual event. But Bortus is too tired. He's always too tired! Bortus tells Klyden no, and to stop before waking Topa. The argument resumes in front of Topa the very next day during breakfast, and Klyden is at his breaking point. He insists that they all have dinner this evening, and as Bortus gets up to go to work, he agrees. On the bridge, Isaac informs the captain that there appears to be a large amount of dysonium on the planet, and Lamar thinks it could be retrieved from the planet after it's been broken up by modifying the tractor beam. If it works, the ship will have free gas for a year. The two are dismissed to figure it out, and yet again, Bortus requests to be relieved of duty early. This time, Kelly asks if he's not feeling well, but Bortus tells them that he's just promised Klyden that he will be present for dinner. Amid the captain's concerns, Bortus leaves and heads to the simulator again. This time, he is a prisoner in a dungeon of a different, equally hot Mocklin who will exchange sex for freedom, I guess, if you insist. I'm a virgin in that way. Well, he missed dinner, and Klyden is waiting at the table for him when Bortus finally arrives. Bortus does not want to fight, so Klyden asks for the sexual event again, to at least salvage what's left of the evening. But once again, Bortus is too tired. As Bortus begins to fall asleep, Klyden hovers over his body and plunges a knife right into Bortus's chest.
You've been served.
Boom. Act 2. It's touch and go for a few, but Dr. Finn is able to save Bortus. Bortus revives to his dismay and tells the doctor that she should have let him die, that Klyden was divorcing him, that Mocklins killed their mate when they are unhappy, and Bortus didn't know just how unhappy Klyden was. Ed tells Bortus that Klyden is in the brig, but Bortus insists that he be released because he has done nothing wrong. Isaac hails the captain to let him know that the dysonium deposits are not natural and would indicate that there once was an ancient civilization living underground on the planet that is now being devoured by the red giant sun. Ed has the poorly conceived notion to send a landing party down there and is dismayed when Isaac tells him so. Oh well, just an amazing archaeological find lost to the wilds of the universe. Alara enters with a cowed Klyden and an ashamed Bortus. Ed says that despite the cultural element at play and Bortus not pressing charges, Klyden's actions cannot go unpunished and he must disembark from the Orville. Both Klyden and Bortus beg the captain to not take that action, and the captain reluctantly agrees under several conditions. No more violent divorces. Bortus is relieved from duty until he is satisfied, and the two must undergo daily couple counseling. In their first fraught session, Claire is able to extract from both the Mocklins that they want to work on their relationship. Claire gives homework to the couple in hopes of making some progress, and also asks Bortus to reserve 1 hour a day that is just for Klyden. Bortus and Klyden make plans to go to work on their homework after dinner, and Bortus excuses himself until then, only to go yet again to the simulator for some work. Despite having a simulated doctor who is willing to go the extra mile to solve Bortus's ache, Bortus ends the program and instead places an order for a new simulation from a crew member whose species is renowned for creating the best pornographic programs. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Isaac has learned that the ancient underground city isn't ancient, but in fact is active. Alara is able to establish communication with the community, and the crew learns that a colony of 75 people live underground, awaiting the inevitable destruction of their planet that will take place in about 24 hours. The crew puts their heads together to work out an evacuation plan and hits the bricks. Bortus receives the new program right away, places it into the computer, and before his very eyes are half a dozen scantily clad Mocklin men waiting for him. The shuttle will take 9 hours to calibrate in order to withstand the gravitational pull of the red giant, and in the meantime, Lamar and Gordon set off for some pizza, but when they order it from the computer, all they get is black sludge. As Bortus basks in the glow of doting Mocklin men, Klyden walks in to the simulator. Uh-oh.
I think we're contractually required to use the word orgy in this episode.
Orgy.
Before we go further.
Yeah. Totally an orgy. 100%. I'm not saying orgy. It's definitely an orgy. Act 3. Dr. Finn counsels the Mocklins once again. Klyden would stab Bortus again if he did not promise the captain otherwise. Dr. Finn recognizes that Bortus has a porn addiction, and it's just like any other disease. Some digging uncovers that Bortus is resentful of Klyden for deciding that their child should undergo the sex change operation, that his porn addiction began around that time, and he doesn't know if he'll ever be able to move on from what happened. Ed contacts the planet again, but during the call, the computer malfunctions and they're disconnected. Isaac runs a diagnostic and finds a computer virus that originated in the environmental simulator from an unauthorized program that was uploaded by Commander Bortus. Ed and Kelly head to the simulator to access the program and are met by the same ready and willing Mocklin orgy men. Isaac might be able to stop the virus now, but there's another problem. The shuttles are ready, but anyone on the away mission will be exposed to a deadly amount of radiation, and the only two members on the ship that could potentially withstand the exposure are Isaac and Bortus, who I guess is back on duty now. Act 4. This away mission affords Isaac an opportunity to question Bortus about his porn addiction and primitive urges. Despite being ashamed, Bortus is able to share that his urges make him feel like nothing else in the world matters, but when it's over, it leaves him emptier. The shuttle approaches the planet, and Isaac and Bortus descend to meet the planet's people. The things have gotten worse, however. Isaac's program hasn't stopped the virus, and the planet has begun to break up. This means that a shuttle can only take one trip, and that they can only take 30 people with them. Lamar and Lieutenant Dan head to Simulator 3 to work on the virus. They turn it on and find a whole bunch of turned-on Mocklin men. Isaac is confused by the way the people on the planet decide which 30 will go by lottery. He suggests it would make more sense to just select the most intelligent of the species. Bortus, despite being a primitive organism, tells Isaac that he is glad he is not like him. 30 people are selected. We watch the tearful goodbye of the First Minister as she urges her husband to take their child and make a new life among the stars. The shuttle takes off just as the planet disintegrates. The shuttle docks on the Orville, and Ed commands Gordon to take them further away from the red giant, but Gordon can't. The helm is not responding, and the star's gravity is pulling them in. Act 5. Hull temperature is rising. The deflectors are damaged. The Orville is about to be a baked potato. With no time to spare, Isaac arrives to assist Lamar with the program. The Mocklin men are so amenable, they even begin licking Isaac's helmet. Isaac creates a counter virus seconds before the Orville is devoured by the star. Slightly damaged, but altogether okay. So too is Bortus, as Dr. Finn marvels at the Mocklin resilience. He is well enough to get ripped into by the captain. Bortus literally almost destroyed the Orville and its 300 inhabitants. Because of that, Bortus offers his resignation. Ed rejects this, but despite bringing a porn virus aboard the ship, his bravery in saving the 30 people on the planet makes Ed proud to serve with him. Bortus heads home to find Klyden. Despite being unscathed by the radiation, the events on the planet have affected Bortus. He tells Klyden that even though he may not ever come to peace with what happened to Topa, he knows that he is grateful to have his family and that he does not ever wish to lose them. Klyden feels the same, and the two agree to spend the evening together.
Really, really nice job on the recap. Couple things about the episode. Interestingly enough, originally was supposed to be a season 1 episode.
So interesting.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. This was written by Wesley Wild, his only writing cred. Worked with Seth on Family Guy and Ted. He was co-executive producer during season 1 of The Orville, and he left at the end of season 1 to reboot the television show Animaniacs.
Interesting.
Where they're zany to the max. Love Animaniacs. Directed by Kevin Hooks. Prolific director. 94 credits as a director, including films, TV movies, and television. Has several acting credits as well, and most notably on the show The White Shadow, which was a high school basketball TV show. Mainly African-American high school basketball team coached by a white guy. Huh. So The White Shadow. Good show. Score by John Debney. Great music during the tenser part of the show. Really kind of helped to ratchet up the tension. And the Nixian First Minister Thies was played by Leslie Farah, who, I don't know, you guys may have crossed paths. She's a Los Angeles actor, very big on the stage out there. So maybe she's been in some local productions. And
I'm sure I've been in. It's seen something she's done. It's very possible.
And most notably, Pretty Little Liars. She was in that show as well. But as far as the episode goes, for most of 2017, it was slated to be episode 12 of a 13-episode season 1. And for those of you that aren't familiar, we had 12 episodes in season 1 and 14 in season 2. This episode would have, had it been in season 1, balanced that out to 13 and 13. It was going to be the second to last episode. So in between New Dimensions and Mad Idolatry. Was briefly scheduled to be the season 2 premiere. That slipped in favor of what we actually got, Jaloja, as the season 2 premiere. Yeah, I can say it right on this one now that we're not covering it anymore.
that totally tracks, though. That's how life works, really.
Sure. And it ended up being the second episode. We got sort of 2 Mocklin episodes in a row, although I don't think Jaloja was very much of a Mocklin episode.
Boris is actually not really in Jaloja all that much.
Yeah, he's really not, but man, Peter Macon is good in this one.
Yes.
Holy cow.
So this was the first time that because I was rewatching it, in order to do this, that I was hyper aware of their prosthetics. I was really curious. First of all, whoever works on the prosthetics of this show had earned their paycheck this episode. They're not only doing Mocklin faces, they're also doing the full body. There's one point where you basically see Bortus in the nude. You see his buttocks and everything. When he takes off his robe with the doctor, you can see where they stopped the prosthetic right above his thigh, so you can see like his actual skin. But if I were editing it, if I was the director of this episode, it's like so minuscule, it doesn't matter. But also, so when Klyden and Bortus are talking, you can see that their prosthetic around their nose starts to get a lot of work, because you really can't be that emotive with a full head prosthetic like that.
Right.
But you can see what they've done was, they've given as much space as they can in the jowl area, and then they make the nose, and then they go from there. And Klyden's doing his darndest to be as emotive as possible without being able to move his eyebrows as well. So I'm sure there's challenges with that. But there's like scenes when they were at the table arguing. Klyden's nose prosthetic was kind of coming up a little bit, and so that would just suggest to me that the scene, they recorded it a lot, and it was an emotional scene. I guess this is a long way to say that not only was there challenges with all the prosthetic work, but there was emotional challenges so like they have to balance those two things in the sense that it was so well acted, especially by Bortus and Klyden.
Yeah, I think it really was. And we talked about, tone, body language, and the Mocklins have kind of subdued body language. I think they're sort of just a stoic characters. And so you have the words and you have some tone and a little bit of body language. But boy, they pull it off. You could really see and feel in many ways the kind of anger and betrayal and confusion that Klyden had. And you could also feel the shame and the kind of embarrassment and torn emotions that Bortus had throughout this. Kind of similar in some ways to the Next Generation episode Hollow Pursuits, which is where I think we're introduced to Barclay.
Oh.
And if not one of the early Barclay episodes where he's spending a whole lot of time in the hollow deck.
Yeah, no, I hate him.
Yeah, why? Yeah, I hate him too.
He's a psychopath. I don't think it's the first episode that we've been introduced to him, because I think it makes it even more creepy that we've seen him before.
Yeah, I mean, there was the first time I remember they were calling him Broccoli and trying to get him kicked off the ship. I can't remember if that's the same episode or not.
I hope that, listen, he is a mix of, he's actually Lieutenant Dan. This is what Lieutenant Dan is.
Yeah.
Heading. Lieutenant Dan is wanting to be part of the team so bad that he introduces himself to one of the orgy men. Hi, I'm Dan.
You think that's why he introduced himself to the orgy man?
Yes, because we're friends.
Okay.
100%. No, so, but I want to take a step back, because you're so right that I was wondering if it's like chicken and the egging too much to wonder if the Mocklins are a stoic culture because they don't have a lot of opportunity to physically emote with their face, etc. But regardless, it's still really well. It's basically they are a blend of Vulcan and Klingon, right?
They kind of are, yeah.
They really are.
Very, very well put.
One of my favorite moments where he has nothing more to say except for hi is when he goes to get the program from that species guy.
Yep.
And someone's like, "Hello, Commander," and he goes, "Hi." Yeah. It's a perfect line delivery. It's a perfect line delivery.
Yeah, it really is. And it summed up a lot. It summed up the fact that he's, maybe more for the next segment, but he's trying to keep what he's doing a secret. He's probably, has some shame in what he's doing, and trying not to compromise his position in front of other crew members, because he is third in command of the ship. It's Ed, Kelly, and then him.
Yeah, this is a conversation for the next segment, because it's when we're going to delve into the morals and the meanings and the deeper things that are going on. So I do want to talk about that. But essentially, he is in control, and he's let this thing that he likes control him. But yeah, we'll talk more about that, and I'm looking forward to that conversation. But yeah, let's talk about Berkeley. He sucks. He's the worst.
Well, I mean, it's definitely weird the way he. And this is not an episode about Hollow Pursuits, but it is weird and unacceptable the way he created a fake Deanna Troi and did God knows what to her in there. We only got to see the G-rated version on syndicated Next Gen, because as we all know, it could be shown at 4:00 in the afternoon after school for people to watch. So they had to make sure they kept it clean. But I think that episode did very much, if not full out state, it did hint at porn addiction, which I think is an episode topic in this as well.
Totally. It's something that is explored. This is not a Hollow Pursuits episode, but it's something that's explored in a Star Trek like world in Black Mirror, which is also fascinating and haunting and fascinating. Yeah.
Yes. And that's the Callista episode. Is that what it's called?
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's something we've talked about a little bit too is the humor. A lot of people feel differently about the humor on this show, that it's not necessary, that it is, that it makes them more interested. I have the argument. My argument is that, like, if they were not to have any humor on this show that is specifically Seth MacFarlane, people would judge this show far more harshly and call it just a Star Trek ripoff, essentially.
Yeah.
But I can also see the argument for the contrary with comments like the these thing where their planet is about to erupt and break apart, and they're contacting these people for the first time, and Kelly finds it necessary to correct Ed on how he pronounced the first minister's name.
That comment touched me to the core.
It's
because
so
I
annoying.
feel like there are times where I am in a conversation and I'm just sort of building to make my point, and somebody's like, "Hey, bud, you got a little something on your shoulder right there," and I'm just like, can this not wait? Is that what you've been paying attention to this whole time? Because I've been doing my best to work with you on something that I think is really serious, and you're just...
I'm sorry that I did that to you at last year's holiday party, Mike. Get over it.
I shall.
No, but you're totally right that, well, sometimes someone would argue that that's like someone being a little manipulative or like afraid to like let someone have the floor. I don't know that Kelly's necessarily doing that, but I guess it shows their relationship again.
Again, just time and place, right? If it's a low key, if it's kind of a low key conversation, then sure, perfectly. If it's the planet is in the process of getting engulfed by its sun, and you have an opportunity to save a remnant of that race, then I don't think the hard ass versus the soft ass counts as much. By the way, since we've talked about Next Gen a couple of times today, Picard totally would have let those people fry. Because Prime Directive, they cannot interfere with a culture, or they can't even contact a culture unless they've achieved warp capability. So, in fact, there was even one episode where they kind of, all stood up and gave a snappy salute to a race of people that they were fully intending to watch become extinct because they had not reached warp capability yet, and it was beyond the Prime Directive to be able to help them. So, Picard would have let these folks fry. So, I'm glad that the right here, this is the plus column. This is a win for the Planetary Union over the Federation, in my mind.
I'm going to agree with that. I guess that's where diplomacy, or not diplomacy, bureaucracy gets in the way sometimes. There's these rules for a reason, but to what end, right? And this actually circles back to the conversation that I love to have about, like, what does a good leader make, and is it someone who can make decisions and then apologize later, or is it someone who follows the red line or the red tape or whatever? But yeah, I think it's the right thing to try and rescue these people. I was just gonna say too, with the Thies thing, it could have been a funnier moment if she was like, "Thies, it's Thies," like say it like that, and now they're in a spat, as opposed to "Thies, idiot," or whatever. Like, right. It's all in delivery, and I might do that. Like, "Oh no, don't get her name wrong, Thies." It could have been delivered a whole different way.
It could have been, but I enjoy the humor on this show because when you work in a corporate environment, you get the humor, right? You have the person that's trying to lighten the mood by being funny, and you have the person that's trying to correct you on things that just don't matter at that point in time. They're just the importance of the conversation versus the importance of the comment just don't add up. And I think we've all seen that. And that to me was why I felt that comment was funny. And I think Seth does a good job of injecting sort of that day-to-day things that you might see in an office environment, like into the Orville, but in sort of an exaggerated, not over the top, but I'll just say an exaggerated manner.
Sure, totally. Yeah, okay. I'm open to agreeing to disagree with you on this one.
I'm always open to it. I can't disagree with you without learning something out of it. So that's a win-win for me. So a little bit of shade being thrown at Isaac this episode. Ed called him a glorified speak and spell.
Right. Yes.
Now they were.
Did you ever play with the speak and spell?
Started. I have not.
Did your kids? I remember speak and spell.
Yeah. I remember we could not. Whenever I asked for it, we did not have a lot of toys growing up. For me, it was pretty much. It was. Oh no, it was great because I had to make stuff and find things and do things, and it actually helped out quite a bit. But yeah, not the kind of house that was inundated with electronics, which was fine. But no speak and spell for me, sadly. What I did have, Jessica, was books. We had. I'm just kidding.
And we burned those for more.
And we burned them for warmth. Just kidding around. No speak and spell. But yeah, so that was a little bit odd. And then Bortus later on. I may be a primitive organism, but I am glad I am not like you.
Well, don't you think that Isaac warranted those comments? He literally tells Ed that his decision it was a bad idea to go to the society, and then he fully judges Bortus about and also is trying to make a cold and calculated decision on how to save people. I think, I don't know.
So I think the shade may be warranted, like you said, but the opportunities to throw shade at Isaac were written into the script.
I see. And
I wonder if that might not be a sort of a prophecy or foreshadowing of maybe things to come.
I see. Now, interestingly enough, when I felt similarly, but for a different reason for things to come, when Isaac asked what the primal urge was like, I felt like that was foreshadowing to Isaac's interest sexually, not necessarily at Bortus, but
yes.
So it felt
sort
like
of a little. I think we have a little budding romance with Dr. Claire Finn and
I think
and
that's
Isaac, so
not
that could be his.
That was my assumption.
Yeah, they went to the Gelogia party together, so
I will say this though, it's really hard for me to to not think that Isaac was on that planet for 700 years and didn't learn some of this stuff while he was observing those people. Like, all the questions he's asking, you're telling me 700 years of data from a different culture. You didn't observe enough at that point. So I'm just saying, anyway, it's just funny to me. It was also, I'm so glad that there was going to be a loophole, or not a loophole, or a plot hole with the radiation. When I was like, well, how are they going to get the people off the planet if radiation is just going to melt everyone but Bortus and Isaac? But, you all have radiation suits, of course.
I imagine you have radiation suits. Yeah, we have one for everybody.
And they just so happen to have more capable radiation suits than the seafaring or the spacefaring people.
And kind of flimsy looking ones, too, at that.
I'm just saying it's a stretch for me. It was a stretch. But anyway, at least they covered their bases on that one.
Yeah. So the two great romances we have on the show are Klyden and Bortus. And we also have Ed and Kelly.
Okay.
Right? Any kind of comparisons between the two that you see?
Well, I think they did. I think they drew the comparisons in season 1 even and paid it off in this. That I think they did. Maybe I'm wrong, but yes, that Klyden even says it that if he's not making enough time, Bortus is not making enough time for Klyden, and that was one of the things that destroyed Ed and Kelly.
Yes, they did. They even actually mentioned that again in Gelogia with Cassius. Yes. We're definitely reminded often of what brought Ed and Kelly apart. And even Klyden throws shade at Ed and Kelly, we do not want to end up like you, Yeah, speaking of that, man, that was a gruesome I'd rather get served with divorce papers any day of the week rather than
get murdered.
Find out about it by being dead.
Yeah. It really is. I don't love the Moclan's patriarchy very much because you're not allowed to get divorced. Really, it's you have to choose your partner. It's very weird.
Yeah, it really is, and I like the just sort of the more comic aspects of Ed reacting to the crew when he and Kelly were like, Moclan's, what's up with these guys? They have sex changes for the babies and they murder each other for divorce. Why can't I just have a normal crew? I loved the line towards the end where things are just going wrong one after another. And Gordon says, Captain, we have another problem. He's like, and Ed is like, oh, neat. What is it? like just not our day that we're dealing with things. And I did like the little bit of support that Gordon threw towards Bortus in the briefing room, where he's like, hey man, everybody does it. I went to town on myself earlier today, kind of making me rethink what the term hug the donkey means.
But no. Mike, no. No.
Okay.
Yes, but
Yes.
no.
No. Okay. Sorry.
Yes, but no. No.
No.
I mean, of course, like that's. I kind of like the normalizing, talking about masturbation and stuff like that. Like I'm all for that because, I especially was raised to be for that stuff to be so taboo, for pleasure, even sex before marriage and all those things. The indoctrination in my head when it comes to those things is so unfortunate, when it could just be something that's enjoyable. And so the more we get to normalize these things, the better. But I will say too, with Ed going, oh, neat, I would 100% say that when I'm in like producer mode or something, things are going wrong one after another. Oh, neat is exactly how I would.
Oh,
great, cool.
I am right there, because when things happen, it tends to multiply.
Yep.
And just everything kind of rolls downhill. And when I get that about fourth call in a row of something going wrong, I'm like, oh, great. Hey, what is it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I can totally relate.
You know what's interesting? I think with them getting almost sucked into the Red Giant, I think this is the first time we've seen the Orville in like grave danger. Like these people are probably going to die, as opposed to like one person maybe going to die or something like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if they had a kind of a. I think about the first half of season 1 of TOS, there was some sort of decaying orbit that was going to threaten the Enterprise. I don't really remember that happening on this.
I mean, we had the dark matter storm that Priya saved them from.
But now they have a dark matter cartographer on board. So somewhere, we didn't see her in this episode, but
that's right. She actually was there. She was next to Gordon for 2 seconds, but you just saw her from behind.
Oh, brilliant.
And then they ended up having a different co-pilot, or as I was assuming, because it's a blonde lady with a similar hairdo.
I did see the flash of blonde woman at the. I think that's the navigator station.
Yeah, I thought. Yeah, even though I thought it might have been her because she sat there next to Gordon for a second. But anyway, I think this is. I will say too, it's a little incongruent. There were panels literally being flipped away as they were getting closer to the sun. But when we saw the Orville fly off into the sunset at the end of the episode, it was totally fine.
Oh yeah, this is looking good. Good looking ship.
Didn't have a problem.
Right. Well, what do you think? Time to move on?
It's time for us to move on, Mike.
All right. Making me sad. Just means we're closer to being over.
Yeah. So we've come to the part of the show where we're going to explore the bigger ideas of the episode Primal Urges, and we're going to discuss the messages, morals, and meanings to see if this episode aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. So, Mike, there's a lot to talk about in this episode. What would you like to start with?
There is. So the first thing that jumped out at me on this episode was I was thinking that it was a story about Bortus's addiction to the environmental simulator, or as we would know it here at our time of recording, porn addiction, which is, I think, technically not a real thing. I think it's let me put it differently. It is not a standalone diagnosis. It's a subset of sexual addiction. Sex addiction. Correct. And I started doing some research on that. So I warned the entire family that if you look at my YouTube history, there's going to be a lot of stuff on there on porn addiction. So it was due to this episode and my research.
How convenient, Mike.
So, and that's okay. It gave us a chance to talk about it, to talk about it with everybody. So this is kind of what I take away. And again, I preface this by saying I am not an expert, but what I did see again and again through different sources was that porn addiction leads to shame. Bortus even said it in this episode. I am ashamed. He acted ashamed. He said, "You should have let me die." He actually said the words, "I am ashamed," to the captain. "I tender my resignation." Those kind of things clinically do lead to anxiety, depression, loss of focus, things that are ADHD type of lack of attention symptoms. And that is all can be tied back to symptoms that come from shame, that come from porn addiction. There are other symptoms and results also that your brain changes the way it processes dopamine. It changes the way it processes pleasure, changes the way it processes sexual stimulation, so that you seek more and more intensity and different kinds of things. And all of those are things that are kind of wearing this great worldwide experiment right now with high-speed internet porn that are kind of, evolutionary brains are just not really designed to handle. We can be introduced to or see more potential sexual partners in a, say a 15, 20-minute period of time on the internet, clicking between different sites and things like that, as cavemen would see in many, 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 many lifetimes of just wandering around the camp or the village and finding people. So very, very a new science. There's been some one great movie that I watched with the very talented Joseph Gordon-Levitt, as well as Julianne Moore and Scarlett Johansson, was a movie called Don John. Came out in 2013, and I watched it. I just kind of thought I watched it, probably about a year or so ago. I think I saw it on one of the streaming services. And, great movie. Young man's got, everything in the world, good-looking guy, works out, got a great car. I think he's got like 72 Chevelle SS, and works out at the gym a lot, goes to the clubs at night. But that's not doing it for him. What does it for him is porn. And that affected his relationships and I'm not sure if it got as far as affecting his career, but definitely his relationships. And in the movie, he was dating Scarlett Johansson, which would be probably enough to do it for most guys. Not Don John. So
I did not know that that's what the movie was about.
Yeah, but it was good. Just one of those. I had never heard of it when it came out. I just kind of caught it one night. So those were kind of the themes that I picked up on initially, and then there were some secondary themes, as there always are, that I kind of wondered how one played into another. But what about you? Thoughts?
I would say, there's a lot that I can relate to in this episode. Namely, I'm not a porn addict, but I'm probably a love addict or like a codependent.
Right.
And my last version of withdrawal for that was 4 years ago, and I almost lost my job. I lost a major part of my community, and my health was suffering, my mental health was suffering, and no energy, etc. And at the time I worked for a person who is in an addictions program, and instead of firing me, she pulled me aside and said, what are you on, essentially?
Wow.
Yeah. And I said, I would love to tell you, not love, but it would be easy for me to say that I'm addicted to drugs and that's what I'm going through right now, or I'm having withdrawals from alcohol, but I'm literally going through a breakup that is taking me for a ride. Now, I had to hit a rock bottom with almost losing my job and a few other things. And now I'm on medication, and I was talking to a therapist for years. And it's interesting because there's an argument to be made that I could relapse as simply without realizing it. And yet I feel like it's justified or not as bad because it's not drugs or alcohol, or maybe it isn't an addiction because it isn't those things. So I can see I can see how people would dismiss this as being an addiction, or people dismiss like a David Duchovny for being a sex addict or something, because like, well, of course he just wants to have sex with a bunch of chicks. And you're so right that we are inundated with sexual partners, and that's partly the issue with dating in LA, is that if one doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. You can just go look on Tinder and find someone else to date. There's so many options, and that's frustrating in some ways when it comes to how to date. But it made me so sad for Bortus when he said that I'm driven to do these things. I'm driven to have sex. I'm driven to complete this thing, and nothing else matters in the world while I'm doing it. But when it's over, it's like there's like a death, and that's so sad.
Yeah, that was really sad, and we've talked about this before. I think mostly not during recording, but having gone through that same kind of breakup, it was years for me to climb out of that hole. I mean, years, and it's not easy. And is that a chemical addiction to a person?
I mean, yes.
It's kind of maybe a rhetorical question.
Well, people don't realize it, but love is an actual drug, and the dopamine and the hit, and then, so I'm just trying to validate you in that it is a chemical.
And these kinds of addictions, what I've been taught over the years is, are they impacting your family? Are they impacting your career? And are you lying or hiding your behavior? And if the answer is yes to any of those three, it's probably time to have an honest conversation with yourself and seek help at that point, because there's a steep hill to climb, and it's going to be very, very difficult to do that, if not impossible, by yourself. And you're right before about what you said. I wanted to circle back to that. If it's not drugs, if it's not alcohol, then people might not be willing to take it as seriously as they could or should.
Even the person that's going through it may not give themselves the credit to go through what they're going through.
That's a really good point.
I know that really, because I lived that. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
To the point where I don't know that I still like look back and go, oh no, that was an addiction. You know what I mean? And I probably could stand to recognize that a little bit more. And shame is such a huge factor in this. Any kind of addiction, any kind of breakup, any kind of it very well could be that Bortus is feeling shame for not fighting for Topa well enough, and shame that he's with somebody that would do that to their child. It's so hard. Shame is a really fascinating subject altogether, and one that I think our society has moved past the necessity for, but our biology has not learned to cope with it well enough yet. And shame existed, some people would say anthropologically, in order to help us not get kicked out from our tribe. But when we are kicked out from our tribe, or shamed out of a tribe, or ostracized, what you really are experiencing is fear of death. Because if you are kicked from a tribe, you more than likely will die.
You're dead.
You're dead, right? So there's arguments to be made that not only are we contending with this shame feeling, what we're really fearing is the fear of death, or ostracization, which makes it so multi-layered and then hard to handle and deal with when you think about it. But I can. Sometimes when I experience shame, or go, oh my God, I can't believe that person's going to think this about me, or oh my God, I can't believe I did that, or oh God, or whatever. And again, let's make this full circle. Being raised Catholic, there's so much shame in even thinking about masturbating, even thinking about having sex before a marriage. I'm not married. I've never been married, and I'm not a virgin. So do the math, Mom. But but that doesn't mean it took me until I was 30 something to stop feeling guilty about having sex, and still that's there. So I think I'm a little bit all over the board right now, but there's so many things that we make people feel bad for that that don't serve us anymore as a society, and shame, when you can take a step back, when you can finally breathe and like have a little bit more self-esteem and a little bit more self-care and self, what's the word I'm looking for? Like kind of like forgiveness in a sense, empathy. You can recognize that like, hey, man, I made a mistake. That sucks. I destroyed the computer of a ship with 300 people aboard. That sucks and embarrassing, but tomorrow's a new day. And the healthier you get with help from your friends and yourself and professionals and medication and what have you, you can get some perspective on shame to recognize that, and this is where Isaac is right, that we it kind of actually made me feel better that we are base primitive organisms that our drives override us sometimes.
Yes, they absolutely do. And I think that is where this topic is such a slippery slope, because we do have those base urges, those primal urges, if you will, and we're given magically. I mean, I'm looking at two screens in front of me right now. I've got an iPad over here. I've got a phone. I've got, another device upstairs. Like you have more stimuli than our ancestors had in millennia of development, and it's all there right now. It overloads your brain. It hijacks your motivation. It preempts or supersedes the need to go out and socialize and accomplish things that would make you feel better about yourself. It's an issue. I don't know how deep it is. I don't know how far-ranging it is. I think it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And just how bad and how deep culturally we go down this rabbit hole, I think, is yet to be seen. And I love the fact that the topic once again was brought up, whether or not sometimes I have issues with how things are handled on the Orville. But I love the fact that it gets brought up. We were talking about PTSD and trauma and dealing with that in the episode Firestorm, right? Whether or not I was in love with the episode is a different subject. The fact that we're talking about this here is tremendous. And, a little shout out to my wife who was watching this episode with me, where, initially I looked at this as a porn addiction episode. She was like, it's a marriage episode. Like if Bortus wasn't still pissed, if they had worked it out, then Bortus never would have retreated into this fantasy world, and then all the other chain of events never would have happened. So root cause analysis. What do you think of that? Any thoughts on?
I think that good writings and good storytelling means that a lot of people can get different things out of the same thing. That's a good piece of art. So it would make sense that you could see it one way, she could see it another way, I could see it another way.
So it sounds like the writers were listening to Alara's feedback that she gave Lieutenant Dan about his poetry.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Leave something up to the listener, to the reader, to decide for themselves.
Or maybe maybe the writers are totally
maybe they're the same writers. I don't know.
It's got to be. So I think the reason why I'm not sitting here analyzing it as a marriage episode, even though I know it is, because even though I do relate to it as being such, right? Like, I would say that I'm resentful of how men date out here because they're not willing to put in the effort to make things work because they don't have to. So that's like again, it's maybe that someone's not available or whatever for whatever subset of reasons. But again, because there's so many partners, as you put it, right? There's not a lot at stake to having to make something work. I also am of the mind, if you're unhappy, don't stay in that relationship, you know?
Right.
But then what's the point? I don't know. I guess I'm just not, I'm more like, damn it, Bortus, leave him, you know? Like,
Yeah.
in some ways. So, but it's all there. The commentary is all there. So, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying it would make sense why I'm not jumping to think about it as solely about that, because it's not something I can 100% relate to.
Yeah, that took me a little while to wrap my head around, because at first I was just like, no. Then I was like, wait a minute, let me think about this for a little while. And I think that was another statistic that came up that I looked at today. It said 61% of men, married men, that regularly view pornography are unhappy with their marriage. It's a pretty high percentage.
And
you know, but I don't know if 61% of men are unhappy with their marriages just overall. So
I was going to say, and the other 39% are lying about it. So
yeah, exactly. So,
you know,
61 just might be the number of unhappy married males. I don't know. I guess maybe I'm in the lucky 39%. I'll leave that up to you guys to decide.
Great. You know, and that doesn't mean that you're without your struggles in a relationship too, you know? And God, it is so confusing. I think there's more that's problematic with the porn industry today than just, oh, look at all these unhappy people that are using it. It's a very deadly career for
the flip
a
side
woman.
of it is terrible. The human trafficking, the drug addiction that's forced upon people, the abuse. Yes.
A lot of those women don't make it to 25, and like I know it's and a lot there's, you know, obviously the claim for sexual empowerment and things like that, but because, you know, sex work is still illegal in so many places, it's so dangerous still. And, you know, like women can't even get homes if they work in the sex industry, or they can't get their names on leases, or they won't get jobs. So for something that is so widely devoured, it is still so our society does not value it in a sense. It does not it devalues the people that are part of it. It's a complicated conversation in so many different ways, and your wife's right that this is a commentary on relationships, and it's a commentary on addiction as a whole, and I don't know that Bortus is healed magically at the end of the day, but having experienced a couple of rock bottom moments in my life personally, it's almost like a light switch turned on. As opposed to I got in a car accident once because I was lamenting a boy years ago. I was very sad and was distracted, and I got in a car accident, and the next thing I remember was, oh my God, my arm's broken. But also, right after that, was that I never thought about the guy again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Immediately my mind went, this was a mistake. You went too far. Like, so rock bottom, because I can have a couple different effects. And for me, it went, get back. And for some people, it can push them deeper. And a couple of times that has happened in my life where the worst has happened, and I was back on my feet the next day because it shocked me. It shocked my system.
Yeah, I mean that's a major event. Probably an event where you felt like, I mean, you said you broke your arm, but possibly it was a life-threatening event also.
And it was an accident. Accidents happen.
Sure.
It was an accident. I was going fast, and then all of a sudden the cars were stopped. It was a traumatic happening, but it wasn't sad. It was just like, holy crap, you caused this. Your life is not no more car now.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with almost losing my job before, that was almost rock bottom too. So I all of a sudden, like when I was about to lose my job, I went, oh, I got to pick up my bootstraps, you know? So, you know, it makes me question, like, they're just like, I see what you said here. Get some rest, get back to work tomorrow. He probably is ready to work, actually.
Yeah, he's probably like, you were careless, selfish, and stupid, but it worked out, so we're good. And Kelly goes, get some rest. You're back to work tomorrow. I would have felt a lot better if it was like, look, one, careless, selfish, and stupid doesn't sound like a lot of empathy towards somebody who, as Dr. Finn said, porn addiction is a disease like any other
Right.
disease, and we need to treat it as such. So maybe those two need to have a sidebar to kind of determine what's best for Bortus. But yeah, calling him selfish, careless, and stupid was didn't show a lot of empathy from him. And I think it should have been, and we're going to get you the help you need. Would have been a better send off than get some rest. Back to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Although, they did like the resiliency of the Mocklin physique, so maybe
and
he'll be
that's
able to shake that off too.
That's what I'm saying is it probably is for the best that he's not going to not do work tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm just trying to say is if I was ready to go back to work 2 days after my car accident, even though I shouldn't have, because I was like, I can't screw off anymore,
Yeah.
So, but you're totally right that while Bortus did make a very, very irresponsible mistake, Ed grilling into him that way that's not empathetic.
No, it's really not. But I do think it was sort of two different things. It was like it was almost like, you know what, dude, your porn addiction and what it did to the ship is, let me see if I can get this right, stupid, selfish, and careless. But you know what? You do a really good job at work, so we're going to overlook it. Different, like I said, two sort of different things. It should have been like, hey, man, you are a valued member of this crew, okay, and we're going to get you the help that you need.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a better message.
Yep.
But the fact that we're talking about it, I think the message, the moral, and the meaning is there. So what do you think? You want to talk a little bit about messages, morals, meanings?
Sure.
Since we kind of hit the big ideas.
Sure. What do you think?
Well, I think I think to me the real. I'll go from smaller messages and morals to bigger ones. So, if you got a problem, talk it out. Don't let it fester inside and get bigger and bigger and worse over time. Like Bortus's resentment towards Klyden. Because that did build up over the course of, I don't know how old Topa is now. Looks like he's about 12. But let's just say it's been a year.
Right.
Talk it out. I do think another moral message meaning is that porn addiction is a thing. Dr. Finn said that. I think we all have some sort of varying opinions on how big of a thing it is. But I think we're all starting to realize that this is something that is taking attention and resources and interpersonal skills and is just becoming a big drain on our society. I think we all kind of might feel that way to different degrees. But the biggest kind of message, morals, meanings I got out of this is, really appreciate what you have. I mean, at the end, I think maybe in addition to Bortus hitting rock bottom by almost getting his ship and the 300 people on it killed, was when he saw First Minister Thies and her husband and their child, and the kind of relationship that they had. And Bortus said at the end of the episode, I do not know that I'll ever be fully at peace with what happened to Topa, but today I witnessed events that I am very fortunate, that I guess let me know that I'm very fortunate to have you and Topa in my life, and I do not wish to lose you again. So just kind of that recognizing and appreciating what you have and not spending your time fantasizing about what you don't have is kind of a good message, moral meaning that I kind of put in my little book of, how can I be a better person today after having watched this?
One of the best things you can do for yourself and for others when you are dealing with addiction and a traumatic situation, post-traumatic stress disorder, etc., and it's very hard depending on how depressed you are, but is to take inventory and express gratitude. I accept my life the way it is, and I am grateful. I'm grateful. So if you start feeling like I don't have this, I wish. If you can turn around those statements to say, I am grateful, even if you don't believe it, it is one way to start the healing process with regards to that. And so it does make sense in some ways that's what Bortus walks out with.
And that's why I love doing this show with you. And that's why I think, if we're to that part of the show, that's why I think the show aligns with the Star Trek and is a great legacy of the Star Trek philosophy.
I'm going to agree. We're talking about real world things today set in space. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, from a global perspective.
Not too bad. Mission Log the Orville is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Our website and your opportunity to connect and comment with us is podcast.roddenberry.com.
Join us next time on Mission Log the Orville as we discuss the episode Home.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.